All right, so today I want to show you how to solve a problem when you're working on a .NET website that's called concurrency. Concurrency is kind of a fun word that kind of at the root of the word is concurrent. So you've got concurrent users using your site doing operations like, for example, we can edit our book. So here I'm going to edit this book on Chrome, and if I go to edit the same book on Firefox, we get, let's say this user representing user A goes ahead and edits our book, and then this user tries to edit the author. You can see it says the record you attempted to edit was modified by another user, blah, 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 blah. It essentially throws this user, the second user, an error of some sort. And really, this error says, hey, this record has been edited or deleted. So go ahead and go back to the list. Now you can see the edit. Now perform the operation again. Okay, and so that is what we're building here. We're building this problem to solve concurrency. Now, again, concurrency is the problem, and what you just saw is the solution to the problem, which is just giving a user an error message that they essentially need to reload the page and try again. That solution, they call that optimistic concurrency. So whatever the terms are, concurrency is the problem. When you have this disconnected model that is the internet, with users disconnected from the data source being the database, and optimistic concurrency is how you solve it. Now, out of the box, what you just saw, this is not how it works. Okay, this is, and we'll, as we walk through this, process, you'll kind of see how it works out of the box. And that is essentially the website crashes, right? Unfortunately, optimistic concurrency it's not really configured out of the box. You have to configure it. Okay, so we're going to build a site that implements optimistic concurrency, which is a solution to the problem called concurrency. So this is a new website that we're going to build, right? And ASP.NET Core MVC, all the good stuff. We're going to create a new project, and this is going to be a .NET Core web app, of course. And I'm just going to call this optimistic, because today we're in a good mood. We're optimistic concurrency. One R or two. I think it's two. Yeah, Tony, what's up?
Is this like chapter 13 we're in?
Yeah, this is still some theory in chapter 13
Okay.
of our textbook. So you guys are welcome to code along. It's not a ton of new code that we're going to see, just a couple of things, including some object-oriented error handling with try catches, right? So we haven't really done a whole lot with try catches, and you'll kind of see how that's going to be used here. Now, as we always do, we're going to start with a model. We're going to do code first entity framework, so we have to tie in a database, and so our model can really be whatever you want it to be. I did books, so I will continue with my book example, and just to make it pretty straightforward, we're going to have some very standard book properties, like an ID that is our primary key, a string for the title, a string for the author, and a double for the price. Now, what's new here, and you can see that my code is auto-filling a little bit, is this property called row version. Now this is specifically this row version. A couple things to point out here. Number one, it is a requirement, okay, that it is a byte array, okay, and this property exclusively is used to solve this problem of concurrency. Okay, it's really used behind the scenes. We don't have to touch it a whole lot. And notice the attribute, the validation attribute, is a timestamp. Well, of course, a timestamp is going to be used to see, who pulled the record first, who saved the record first. Timestamp, when you have multiple users, who does what first, obviously is how this is used. Okay, so you see row version is required for optimistic concurrency, being the solution to the problem concurrency, and the byte data type is required. So other than this row version, nothing new here. Now, the next steps that we're going to take now that we have our model is all related to entity framework and setting up the database. So we've done this several times, but let's just continue to do it again with managing NuGet packages, bringing in, if we click browse, our entity framework packages for SQL Server. And the tools. Now that we have these two installed dependencies, we need to set up a connection string inside of app settings. We will create a connection string as such using local DB instance of SQL Server. Just to highlight the important pieces here, my connection string is called bookdbcs. That's the name of my connection string. The name of my database is booksdb. We're doing everything pretty much locally, so we say it's trusted, and that's fine. It is a trusted connection. So that's our connection string. The next piece is to tie our context model, which we haven't created our context, to our connection string. So this line here inside of our program.cs, it ties in our connection string to our context file. Our context file is not yet created, but remember that context model, that context file will be essentially what we use to connect to our database. And if I do control dot, it'll generate our book context. However, I'm not sure where it'll put it. So I'm just going to generate, right click on models, add a new item. We'll call this book context. And that needs to inherit from DB context. And we got a pretty good autofill here. We need to bring in Entity Framework Core to make that happy. We have a table called books. And I'm going to seed my database with 2 books. So this method, onModelCreating, is what we use to seed our books. And then just to make this happy, we have to add our models folder here. That'll help that recognize that class inside of Program CS. So I can now close my Program CS, close my app settings, and we are ready to add a migration and create that database with some seed data. Okay, because I personally have this database, you don't have to take these steps. I'm just going to remove the database that I did in the books DB because I've already created this database. So I'm going to delete it so that I can recreate it as we've set up here. So I'm going to add a migration called initial. And let's see what breaks, see what I messed up. Okay, looks like we're creating a table, and looks like we're inserting a couple of books. So this looks good. Let's go ahead and run the update database command. That should create our database, insert the table, insert the data. Looks good. Let's refresh. Books DB, tables, view data, 2 books. Very good. All right, now that the database is there and we have a model and we have a context file, we're able to do what you've probably seen me do a time or two before, which is called scaffolding. And scaffolding is when we create a controller with a lot of templated code that is good to do once you kind of know what you're doing, right? I wouldn't start by scaffolding my code. But once you've kind of been around the block or time or two, it can actually save a little bit of time, quite a bit of time, to use this code feature. So I'm going to do add controller. And this is going to be my book controller. I'll call it books, plural. Did that the wrong way, so let's delete that. Let's see, right click, add controller, ... MVC controller with views using Entity Framework. I just autopiloted, selected the first option, but we want to use this MVC controllers with views using Entity Framework. This is going to be how we scaffold using this model, using this context file, generate the views, all these default options. And this is kind of CRUD operations out of the box. Again, I always find myself having to make changes here, but nonetheless, it's a good starting point. Okay, so if we kind of look, we have an index, that gets all the books asynchronously. So we're definitely going to use that. We can get a book by its individual ID, book details, book 5. We can create a new book. We can post a new book. We can create a new book, post versus a get. And we've got an edit. So here we're editing a book by its ID. And so this is my edit. This is the get request. And then here's my post request for my edit. And you can see there's a little bit going on here already on my post for optimistic concurrency. It doesn't work how you would expect it to. Let's just see how this works out of the book, out of the box, right? So once we scaffolded, I want to see essentially the problem that if I go to /books, we'll be able to read the books. And if I kind of copy this into Firefox and paste, I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to click on edit. I'm going to edit this book, 1, 2, 3. And well, there you go. That was the first problem. And that is, if you're doing this, like all of a sudden, like my edits don't even work. And so let me just do it. I know the solution here, but I just want to see if I just do it here by 1, 2, 3. Yeah, even out of the box, my edits aren't working. And the reason being is because that row version is not stored in the view. So we're actually getting a validation error in that when I go to edit, if model state is valid, then we do this, but model state is not valid because the row version isn't stored in the view. So if I go into my view, I go into my books, I go into my edit, you can see here I've got a hidden for my ID, I've got an input type of hidden, ASP4ID, and then I've got all my controls for my other fields, but I don't have anything on my book about that row version. So let's add input type of hidden, ASP4, and this is my row version. Okay, so now that I save my row version in a hidden field, let's click edit code. If that updated properly, now at least my edits should be working. 1, 2, 3. Cool. Okay, so now my edits are working because that row version, for whatever reason, the scaffolding didn't pick up on that. I had to add it. So now let's kind of go back to the optimistic concurrency thing. And let's click edit, and let's click edit, and then I'm going to take off the 1, 2, 3 here, and then I'm just going to put an S on his name here, and boom, program crashes. This is the problem. The problem, as you can read, is a concurrency problem. The database operation was expected to affect 1 row, but actually affected 0 rows. Data may not have been modified or deleted since entities were loaded. See the problem here for more details, but you know what's happening here. This is an exception that's not being caught. This is an exception that's not being caught, and you can read about it right there. I mean, that's what an unhandled exception is. Unhandled meaning it's never caught. So we have to catch that exception now. And so I want to go into my books controller and catch that exception. Okay, I'm going to use a breakpoint to kind of show what's happening here. Essentially, the try block will fail. The catch block will in fact catch it. But here it just rethrows it. Okay, and so if I put a breakpoint in, I just want to show you that the catch block, it is catching a DB update concurrency exception, but we're not handling it because in this case we're just rethrowing it. So I'm gonna run this in debugging. So I'll hit my breakpoint. /books, again, /books representing 2 users, edit, I'll put some numbers on this guy, hits my breakpoint, no problem the first time through. It's only on the second time through when I put some numbers on this one, I click save. Okay, just to show you what's happening here, my save changes doesn't work the second time. So my catch block does catch the exception. You see, if the book does not exist, well, it does exist. And that's a little local method to see if the book exists. The book does exist, so it hits my else block. And what does that do? Well, that doesn't do anything. That else block rethrows the exception. And so therefore it's never caught, therefore problem right there. Okay, so what we just saw is that this is working. We just want to handle this a little bit differently. So you now know the type that you have to catch, and if you remember your try-catch blocks, you know this is the type, and you can make a variable identifier called whatever ex. Now, I demonstrated this problem with edit operations, but it could also happen with deletes, right? So you could go to edit a user and then someone else deletes the user. So maybe you want to handle like an edit or delete. And so that's kind of what I did here. If I throw in this code, I'm going to show you the code and then I'll explain it. Okay, notice my exception variable is called EX. And so I read a little bit about this variable into this thing called entry. And then I call this entry get database values. And here I say if it's null, meaning it's no longer there, the database value is no longer there, here's the magic, line 114. We just, in our model state, we add a model error that says unable to save, the book was deleted by another user. Okay, remember this is just adding, this is a way to manually add validation error message, right? If you go back to the validation chapter, we did some in the controller, from the controller, adding a model error that says this. So basically, if the book was deleted, and I'll add a little comment here, if the book was deleted, DB values will be null. Otherwise, the book, or actually, it says optimistic concurrency, basically the book was edited, I would say. The book was edited by another user. Okay, now you could do more here than just giving them an error message, but this is kind of like what I would consider bare bones. This is very bare bones, and we're saying, hey, reload the page. And you could get into more details like another user edited the title or another user edited the description or the price. You can give more details like that. But this is very high level. We're just adding, and then the last thing here is you want to return the book to the view so that it can be used by that view and display this model error. So inside of here, I have return view book. Now, let me see, close, return view book. Let me see, this closes my catch. Wait a minute. I'm sorry, this return view book is after my catch block. Right here is where I return my view to the book. And actually that might not be needed because if you just do that, let me see, I should be able to take that out because the next thing is to return view book right here. I think I can just delete that line. Okay, so that solves the problem. This adds a little error, and let's run it and see if I left anything in here that breaks. /books and /books, edit, deletes the numbers and adds the numbers, and there you go. Let me try clicking, again, I haven't edited, so I'm going to click on delete, I'm going to click edit, I'm going to click to delete the book. Now he's gone. If I go 111, okay, I didn't test that, so this fixing the delete, obviously, that needs to be worked on. And I think probably just like I had to add the row version on the edit page, I'm going to have to add the row version on the delete page to solve that problem. But this is where I wanted to get it today, just dealing with the edits, and we'll stop there.